That's another feature of these revolts. They do not include marginalized people. They do not include minorities. If you looked at Occupy, there was hardly any minorities in that. They tend to be very middle class, very main, whatever the ethnicity is that you're talking about. In Egypt, in Tahrir Square, it was the educated. It was the golden youth, the educated young people of Egypt who had been connected through the web. There was just enough connection in Egypt. You could put a few 100,000 people on the street. These were not the poor, the downtrodden. So in Israel, they went to them and said, "What do you want?" And they said, essentially, "I don't want to talk to you." Or they talked to them, just half of them talked to them, and then whatever they came up with said, "No, I don't agree with that. You're still corrupt." Dealing is there. They have what I describe as a sectarian approach to politics. Sects are very pure, very virtue-oriented, and dealing with the great world out there is somehow sinful. The center is sinful, and I, in my border sect, I'm a pure person. And that is invariably what you find. They cannot take yes for an answer. The yellow jackets in France, everything they have asked for, they've gotten, and then a whole bunch of other stuff, okay? And they're still out there. They're still out there.
You talk about in the book the difference between the center, which is sort of the hierarchical top-down group, versus the border, the people on the edge who are emergent. Different groups rise up at different times with different flavors, but no one's in charge of them, obviously. I'm reminded, as I have been in the past on here on the program, about Yeats's poem, The Second Coming. The center cannot hold. You're a avowed pro-democracy person.
Yes.
Are you worried about the future of democracy? Let's start with the United States or in the West more generally. It seems to me at risk.
Yeah, I actually have probably overdone Yeats in my writings. I mean, at some point I should shut up with Yeats. My answer to your question is not yet. I feel that there's a fairly obvious way. I mean, we changed in the 20th century from essentially an 18th century democracy to an industrial age democracy. That happened.
Yeah, an agrarian economy, much more rural. Right. We became a industrial, urban place.
And all the hierarchies that we're now talking about are falling apart and losing authority. We're at that moment adapted to that particular social and political environment very neatly, I think. So it is not an impossibility that we can reform our system. I am a reform freak. I'm not a revolutionary. I think point to me a revolution that did any good. The American Revolution wasn't really a revolution in my book.
Yeah.
But reform, I think, would mean flattening the pyramid. We now can do that. A tiny little country.
Explain.
Yeah.
What do you mean by flattening the pyramid?
Well, okay, how many layers, Russ, are there between you and the President of the United States of America? I mean, I worked in that hierarchy, and I have no idea, but it's
a lot of them.
It's hundreds of layers. Do we really need every one of those? Do they all serve a productive function? Do they really sustain an edifice that is the best we can have given our situation today? And I think the answer is no. I think that's when people look at the government, they don't see the government. They see the layers of bureaucracy between them and the people who actually decide things. Well, I think a lot of those can go, and I think the internet can help. And I think if you look at a little country like Estonia that has essentially digitized many of its government functions and gotten rid, therefore, of a lot of its bureaucracy, that's one way you can go. I think, though, there needs to be something more fundamental than that, or let's say less structural than that. And that gets back to the Yuval Levin point, which is there is something broken with our elites today. There is a this is almost wanders into an area which I find very tricky, which is morality. All right, but in the end, politics is determined by morality, by what we think is right and wrong. And I think our elites, and I've thought about this very carefully, our current elite class is broken. It's just broken. They have lost a sense of what it means to be an elite, which is you give up a lot more than you get. Go back and see how happy George Washington was to go back to the farm. It was like the happiest thing that happened to him. He could now do whatever the heck he wanted to. When he was president, every moment of every day he had to kind of calibrate, how should I behave in a way that is responsible and fitting for my office, right? Well, nobody thinks that way anymore. And I think maybe we don't want George Washington anymore. We have, white periwigs have gone out of style, and maybe that serious institutional model is not what we would use, but some equivalent of that. And that just needs, it just means we need new people. We need new people.